Hello, I'm your host, Aveline Clark, and this is the Six Star Business Podcast, where we have conversations with amazing, incredible people all about what it takes to be six star, going beyond the status quo, doing things differently, and how they bring purpose, love, and impact into their businesses every day. And in this episode, I met with Erica Rooney from North Carolina in the USA. She's a women's empowerment coach. She's also a mum and has a full-time job. She talks about her journey and the things that held her back and what drove her to become a women's empowerment coach. She talks about the six-star elements and how she's living her purpose now finally, and how inspired she is to be able to help others to do the same. This conversation isn't just for women, because Erica supports women and helps them to achieve their goals. It's for everybody. The lessons are applicable to anyone. It's a great conversation, and I know you'll get a lot out of it. Here is Erica Rooney. Here we are. It's another episode, and I am here with Erica Rooney. I'm very excited to have you here today, Erica. How are you doing?
I am doing so great. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. So welcome to the podcast, and I just love these conversations. I love to learn about people and their journeys and what makes them six star, or what, just draw out these ingredients that we, talk about all the time. So let's get started, shall we? Let me ask you a few questions about you so we can get to know you a bit better.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay. So tell me, could you tell us where you are in the world, who you serve, how you serve them, and then something you like to do when you're not busy serving people?
Yes. So I live in Wake Forest, North Carolina in USA, and that is right outside of what they call the Research Triangle Park in Raleigh, North Carolina, so the capital of North Carolina. Originally from Florida, but I migrated up here about 15-ish years ago for a job, fell in love, got married, and have never left. But I am also a chief people officer and an executive coach and HR consultant. So during the day, I serve all of the employees at the company that I work for, ensuring that they have a positive employee experience. But my passion and what really lights me up is my executive coaching gig. And what I do there is I empower women to get seen, get heard, and get promoted. And how I do that is by addressing our limiting beliefs, which I coined sticky floors, and I help women clean up those sticky floors to break through the glass ceiling. So the things like imposter syndrome, perfectionism, toxic relationships and behaviors, all of those things that are within our span of control that hold us back, that's what I help women address so that they can live a life that is truly the life that they want to live, that they feel like they can have it all if they're moms, if they're caregivers, that they can do all of these things. So that's who I serve and kind of what I do. And when I am not doing all of those things, I am a huge fan of travel and of health and wellness. So if anybody has video, and if you're using video, you can see all my fitness equipment in the background. I'm always running. I always run 2 marathons in a new state every year is always my goal. COVID kind of derailed that for a few years. So looking to get back on track, but yeah, and traveling, exploring the world.
Fabulous. I mean, I love all of that, very aligned, in so many ways. Those things that you mentioned about, who you serve and why they get stuck, and why they have the sticky floors. I'm sure we could talk for like 5 hours on those topics. I'm sure that every single person listening can relate to each of those to some degree. It would make for really quite a fascinating consulting role that you have, and also, I would assume, very rewarding.
It really is, because when you start to do the work and you dig in, you really realize everybody has these sticky floors, and to different degrees, So when I first started doing this work, and I also host a podcast, and I started talking with women about their different sticky floors, I kept going, oh, me too. Oh my God, me too. Me too. And then I was like, wow, I'm really messed up. The truth is, We're not. We're just imperfect, right? And to be human is to be imperfect. But with social media and all of these other things out there, we put out a rainbows and butterflies type picture, and that's not reality, you know? And I get this question asked all the time, you know, how do you do it all, Erica? You're a chief people officer, you're the executive, you have your own business, you have 2 little kids. Like, how do you do it all? And the truth is I don't, you know, I don't do it all. And I break down and I have my flaws. We're just working through them together, you know? So I absolutely love talking with women and, you know, hearing what their sticky floors are, because it brings this sense of connection.
Beautiful. Yeah, and we need to talk about them, and that's how we do connect. And we actually, I believe, through that just connection piece, we can, help together to heal ourselves and move forward and get through the boundaries and the barriers that are holding us back. And in this example, the sticky floors, help clean them up.
Yeah. And so many women come through and I have asked them, hey, do you want to be a guest? And they're like, I'm not the right person because I don't have it all together. And I'm like, that's the point. None of us do, right? Like none of us have it all together. And I will be going through the day and going through my life. And then I'm like, you're stuck again. Like you're doing it right now. You are doing it, but it's bringing that awareness to it and then making a decision. What do I want to do?
How do you, when you coach your clients on this, what's something that you help them with to figure out or have that awareness around, oh, I'm stuck? Like, because I believe from my own experience, we get in these loops of habitual loops and patterns, and we might not even be aware that we're stuck or that we're, you know, so how do they get aware?
Absolutely. Get out? And that's part of having a coach. That is the best part of it, right? Because you are having somebody that is helping you and holding you accountable. And I believe that when you are in these types of roles and doing these types of things, that you need someone to hold you accountable. I have one woman that I'm working with, and she often gets stuck in the wrong mindset, right? Where it's a very much a blaming mindset, and it's, you know, I'm the one that's at fault and it's me. And so often I won't remind her that, I won't point it out to her and tell her that. But what I will say to her is, can we switch that? Can we reframe that? And then it kind of clicks for her. Okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing it again. And then she can pause. She can take a moment and reframe and move on. But sometimes it's having that person to keep you accountable, because we don't realize that we're stuck in them.
No, you're right. And I guess having that person there, they act as like a mirror. They kind of hold up the mirror and say, hey, see what you're doing? Whereas on our own, we don't have the mirror, the ability to look and see. Quite often it's like the iceberg with it, you know, the picture of the iceberg where there's only a part that you see at the top and there's this big bit unseen underneath. The same applies to us individually, right? And it's through relationship, you know, with others and letting them in that they can actually shine a light on those other pieces.
Absolutely. And that's one of the fun parts for me too, is the more I get to know somebody and the more I'm working with them and the closer we become, the easier I can see and pick up on those things and kind of help them through it, which allows them to kind of pull themselves out of that stick way faster than they would have if they were just sitting on that by themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, so powerful. Tell me, I'd love to know a bit about the journey. Like what brought you to where you are today to be doing this for women?
So it's interesting and it's a little long-winded, so I'll preface you with that. But it started back in college when I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, right? And I knew that I wanted to help people, but I didn't really realize that that was my why at the time. And I actually got into nursing because that's what my mom did and that's what my grandmother did. So that's how I could do it. And then I very quickly realized that I didn't like science and I didn't like blood and guts. And that is a pretty big component of nursing. So that was out. And by chance, I fell into the role of corporate wellness. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And then again, by chance, I had a local gym came to one of the classes that I was in, and they said, we need personal trainers. We will teach you how to do this, but we need them. And we very much so need women because we have a women center. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. It'll work with my schedule. I've always been a hustler. I've always been about like, we'll make money. We'll do this. We'll do that. So I signed up, got the job, and started working in a women's center, training only women. And I absolutely loved it. And I actually got pre and postnatal specialized. So I was training only pregnant women. So it was just so rewarding to help women in this stage of their life where they were going through changes in their bodies that they couldn't control, changes in their lives that they didn't know what was going to happen. And I was right there with them the whole time. So that kind of worked with me through college, and I got my first job as a corporate wellness instructor for Verizon Wireless. And I was teaching all of their employees how to be healthy. I was teaching yogas and boot camps, and it satisfied almost everything that I wanted. I was helping people. It was a fun job. It was instantly rewarding. But my problem is I'm also a very growth-minded individual, and fitness instructors can only go so far up the food chain before you hit that wall. And I very quickly hit this wall, and I was like, you mean to tell me there's nowhere for me to go? And I'm like 25. This is as high as my career is going. Like, I can't, you know? So I started trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do? So I fell into HR by chance, right? And I happened to get a job doing all things HR, and I loved it because I was still helping people. And that's kind of when I really realized that my why and my passion, it wasn't necessarily fitness, right? I loved fitness, but that wasn't my why. My why was helping people. And fitness allowed me to do that, and HR allowed me to do that. As a growth mindset person, quickly scale that HR ladder all the way up to the chief people officer, right? There's nowhere to go from being a chief people officer. So here I am, I'm 37 years old. I'm trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do next? And I was really struggling. And I was also really lonely because it gets very lonely at the top, right? You don't have anybody that you can talk to, especially as a woman. There are less and less people that you identify with. There's less and less people who understand you as a mom, as a working mom, as a working executive mom, what that means. And I started really just kind of going into a depression and really struggling because I wasn't helping people anymore. I was helping the business, right? I was all about revenue and EBITDA and margins. And that's great because I was helping everybody keep a job, but I wasn't helping people. And so that's when I got into executive coaching, and I was like, I'm just going to do it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to do it. And I just dove all into studying for this certification and putting the hours together and sitting with women, doing a lot of pro bono. And you can't deny it when things light you up, you know? And I was absolutely loving the conversations that I was having with women. And I was like, you know what? Like, I want to do more of this, and I want to share this because I know how I felt as a chief people officer, executive, mom, woman at the top. I am sure there are other people out there. So that's when I kind of started putting together the glass ceilings and sticky floors concept. And I was like, we need to share these stories about women. And that's really kind of what launched my podcast, and is really what's driving me today, is just hosting this podcast and sharing the stories of other women and letting everybody know that we're not alone, you know?
Love that so much. What a great journey. And you've obviously got a very keen sense of self-awareness to be able to see yourself at 25 to say, hey, hang on, this isn't working.
Long term.
Not going to work. No. Yeah. I'm kind of made a little bit differently. So good on you for being so tough and obviously, like you say, growth minded and a real hustler to take the leap, take the step and put yourself out there. When you did that, did you have any doubts or fears about changing direction or changing course?
Oh, I had a ton, you know, because fitness is fun, you know, like you get to wear workout clothes to work, you get to talk to people. Like, it was a fun job. And I was like, I'm also going into HR where I'm going to be firing people. Like, can I do that? So I did have a lot of struggles. I was very fortunate to have a great mentor and to really have a career path that I was able to create that worked well for me. But it was very nerve-wracking. I kind of was going in blind, but I knew that the bigger picture of my life that I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a mom that could stay home with my kids if I needed to. I couldn't do that in a fitness related job. So I knew that something had to change.
Mm. Did you have an internal belief that it wouldn't matter how you landed in this new venture? Like, you were obviously looking to get out of fitness. Was there a foundational belief in yourself that everything would work out? Did you have that sense of surety, or were you really, you know what I mean? Because some people have this in them. It's like, even though there's the unknown and they have the fears, because we all have fears of the unknown, but there's also this internal sense of security in life itself, a trusting, an inner knowing.
So I don't know that I went into it with like this true good feeling of trust and knowing that the universe was going to work out for me, because I've had some pretty bad days and I've had some pretty big challenges, and I didn't see the universe looking out for me then, but I also know that I had survived 100% of my bad days. So while I was confident in taking a different approach, I trusted my ability that if it wasn't going to work out, I would find something else, or I would do something else, or I would get back into fitness, or whatever the situation was. So I don't know that I would put it out there that, because I've seen people who are just like, yep, I'm going to walk away from this job because it's a toxic place and I'm out of here. I'm not that kind of person. I got to have another job lined up. I got to know where my next paycheck's coming from. Like, I need a little more security than that. But I do know that I can overcome my hard days, so I'm not going to walk away from a toxic job without another job, but I will start looking for another job.
So you've got that inner sense of confidence in yourself. You know that you will make something happen, and you can, and you've got the tools to make the change.
Yes. And I mean, I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and like the world plays out in certain ways, and we may never understand what those reasons are. So I do believe in that, but I do believe in myself and my ability to take care of myself and pick myself up and do what I need to do.
And that's what we need. As adults, we've got to be responsible and accountable to ourselves first before we can be responsible and accountable to anybody else. And
absolutely. And accountable is such an interesting word, right? I've actually been doing a lot of research about accountability lately. And because it holds such an icky feeling, like if I come to you and I'm like, let's talk about your accountability, you're immediately going to be very defensive. So I'm starting this mindset shift about not holding people accountable or myself accountable, but holding people capable, right? Like I am capable of doing the things I need to do. I am capable of surviving. I am capable of thriving, right? But that's on me. But it kind of gives me that freedom back, whereas accountability is more, I don't know, parent-child relationship type, and it feels restrictive.
Exactly. There's a heaviness to it, and there's an element of judgment or, good, bad, pass, fail.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I like that a lot. So how long has it been since you started the coaching business, and how is that going?
So about a year now, actually. We're coming up on a year, which is amazing. Since I started the executive coaching piece of it, I've added a lot more to that since then. So it doesn't quite feel that long. Like I didn't start my podcast until several months later and things like that, but it's going really well. And it is bringing women into my life that I just love working with. Right. And my boss that I have in my current role, he always says, you can't unring the bell. And now that I know how lit up I am when I am working with these women and I have found what I truly love to do, like this is where I'm meant to be, and I walk away from those calls I walk away from them feeling fulfilled, right? Like they're paying me to feel pretty dang good about myself, and what I'm doing. So it's just truly amazing.
You mentioned before your why, and now you've talked about, that when the bell rings and feeling amazing. I like to talk about purpose. And there's a slight differential between why and purpose, but they're very similar. What was it how did it feel for you when you first tapped into that and you figured out, this is my purpose for being at the moment, this is my purpose?
You know what? It's interesting because I always thought my purpose was to be a mom and to show my children that moms can work and moms can do these different things and moms can support themselves, right? I always thought that was it. And then when I started getting further down the road and I really started digging in and doing the work, I was like, it's not just about me showing my kids that, right? Like that's a piece of it, but it is about bringing every other woman with me, right? And about bringing more women into executive level roles and allowing women the opportunity and providing them that space to find what their purpose is and how they can live their purpose out as well and make good money and be independent, right? Earn the same, if not more than a man, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want my daughter thinking she should earn 83 cents to the US dollar while every man earns $1, right? That's BS, but that's the truth, right? I want my daughter and every one of her friends to walk into a corporate role and not be immediately assumed to be the secretary, So it's so much bigger than just showing my kids, yeah, mommy can work too. It's great. It's about making this space equal for all women and making it so that they can have it all.
And whatever that looks like and means
whatever
to them.
That means for them, right? If your all is staying home with your kids, that's awesome. If your all is teaching yoga out of the back of a van, that's also awesome, right? If your all is being a chief people officer, having a podcast and running marathons, that's cool
too. Absolutely. Love it. And it's so true. We are all different. We're all unique. And we've got to figure out what that recipe is for us individually.
Yes. But we also need to do the work to make it so that that's okay in society, right? Like, why do we have to fight it? And it's so much harder, right? It doesn't need to be, So it's all about doing the work so that the people behind us don't have to.
You've tapped into a really key point, and that is the way society perceives it. Talk to me about the difficulties that we have at the moment, or what you see in the society, the fabric of society that stops us from being six-star or from living our purpose.
And a lot of that goes to a lot of the sticky floors that I was talking about, right? Like, let's just take working moms, for example. We are expected to raise our children a certain way. We are expected to raise them like we don't have jobs, yet we are expected to work like we don't have children. We're held to this expectation and this standard that is just completely unrealistic. And then the woman is trying to meet all these unrealistic expectations and running herself ragged and just getting exhausted and then burning out. And then everybody's looking at us going, well, kind of said so, which is BS, right? So like that is a big piece of it. And, societal expectations, they're all over the place. You should be here. You should be there. They're telling us what we should do instead of allowing us to listen to what our hearts are telling us, what our purpose is telling us. If you don't want to be a mom, great. If you don't want to work, great. If you do want to work, great. Like it takes all kinds for this world to go around. And just because someone is different or doesn't meet those norms, that society has put out there, doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just means that we should probably embrace that and learn a little bit more from their different perspectives.
That's the whole piece around diversity, but understanding that we are all diverse, we're all unique, and accepting people for who they are.
Yeah.
Do you see a shift happening? Do you see any changes in the last, I guess 5 years around that for society to be more accepting? Or are those notions of what's perfect and right, are they still firmly entrenched?
I do think that the new generation that is coming up is demanding it, right? Like they are not, complacent with it. They are very vocal about their thoughts and their feelings. And I think that is extremely helpful. Like they are not here for the BS, and I think that we are going to see a much larger shift as they continue to grow up and have their own children, and that goes through. But I think these types of shifts take time. We still have people who were born in a completely different era where cell phones didn't exist, so until certain things work their way through time. I once worked with a woman who talked very much about gender norms. She never felt that she fit into a true cookie cutter picture of what a little girl should look like, right? And how she should act. And it was hard for her. Like there was a lot of challenge, and she still faces that, as time goes on. But again, as time shifts, people are becoming much more accepting of all of those things. So I am seeing the shift, and I think that is wonderful. But I even go back to some of the things that I do, right? I dressed my little boy in all blue, and I dressed my little girl in all pink. And that was just a norm that I just fell right into, So it's going to take time.
Indeed, it will. But it's great that there is an awareness. And I think that, like you said, the generation coming through now are quite demanding, and they're being very vocal about where
quality
exactly. This is, where their money is spent and why. And, they will refuse to go and buy that toothpaste if they, don't believe in the values or ethics or where, how they treat their employees. So that's, I think, going to be a massive shift that we'll see in the next 10 years about the way that this generation impacts these big companies.
They have higher expectations of us.
Absolutely.
And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a bad thing. It almost feels to me like there's this, we've all got to level up. It's like these younger people, and I have a daughter who's just turned 23. And so I feel that every day there's this rising up of consciousness, awareness, and standards. And it's going to be interesting. And I wonder also, because of the way they interact and how they share things on social media, and they use social media as their platform, that this shift might happen faster. But certainly around companies and brands and the way they treat people, I feel that there's going to be a bigger shift, and it will be it'll happen faster because of the power of using social media and the loudness of their voices.
What I love about them too is, when I grew up, it was treat everybody the same, because we're all equal. And I think this generation and the world's events has really shown us we are not all equal, and that's not okay in a lot of instances, but it's also okay to treat people differently, for whatever the situation calls for, like you just, I don't know. It's interesting, right? How perspectives have shifted.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to take you go back to your journey a little bit. Was there one thing in your journey that kind of was that, I don't know, the slap across the back of the head, or one of those events that get you questioning about what you should be doing and asking you to reevaluate things? Can you share that?
I think it wasn't so much a slap across the back of the head as it was a slow realization that I was stuck, right? And so here I was on the outside, a chief people officer, married, 2 healthy kids. I work out every day, Instagram picture perfect life, right? Going on trips to the Maldives, all the fun things, you know, but inside I was really struggling. I felt alone in my job. That was seeping out into my relationships. It was the middle of COVID. We were all stuck at home. Nobody was going everywhere. And I just wasn't happy. And it was this slow realization that I wasn't happy. And to be very honest, I was probably drinking way too much wine. And I kind of had this moment, and I think a lot of people did during COVID, where I was like, okay, I could keep going down this rabbit hole and I could keep drinking my wine and being unhappy and nothing is going to change. Or I could stop. You know, I could stop and I could make the change and do the work on myself. And, you know, I had a very honest and transparent conversation with my husband. And I was like, this is what we need to do. You know, I need to stop drinking. I'm going to focus on doing these things and, you know, seeing what happens with that. Right. Because where's the harm in trying that? And since giving up drinking is what really kind of took things off. Right. Like my depression lifted. I felt more connected with people, which all of this is very interesting, right? Because you drink when you're happy, you drink when you're sad, you drink to connect with people, but like none of those things were happening. You know, I was just by myself at home wallowing in my sorrows, and it wasn't doing me any good. And I didn't feel connected to what my Instagram profile was showing, you know? So all of that even made it more challenging. And when I kind of got real with myself and I said, okay, this is what you're going to do, that's when things really started to turn around for me.
Beautiful. Do you, in the work you do with your clients through the coaching, do you find that they find you because they've had one of those moments where they're reevaluating things, they're stuck? Is their story similar to yours, or?
Sometimes. I think a lot of the women that I work with connect with me because they see that I am a working mom with a successful job. And I think there are so many struggles out there for working moms that have high level jobs. You know, that was one of the areas that I have always struggled in. And, you know, in our old home, before we moved into the home that we're in now, lived in a wonderful neighborhood. Every single woman stayed at home with their kids, right? They wanted to get together on Tuesdays at 2:00. And I was like, I'm working, you know, like I have to do all and my life was so different because none of these women worked. And that's great. Like I absolutely respect women who stay home, but it wasn't my life and it wasn't my journey. And I couldn't connect with them on those things, right? Because I was taking my kid to daycare. My struggles were finding, you know, alternative care for my kids when they were sick and I had a big meeting and all of the scrambles, right? My stressors were very different from theirs. And I think a lot of the women that find me now are women in higher level positions where the weights and the responsibilities that sits on their shoulders are so much different from anyone else, you know? And when you get to that level, I said it before, it's very lonely, right? Like understanding that an entire division of a company rests on your shoulders, right? And if you do the wrong thing, you know, or how are you perceived if you do this? Or what if you can't travel? Or what if you have to go on maternity leave? All of those things sit very heavily on women's shoulders in a way that is different from a man's, right? I mean, nobody has asked my husband how he balances his travel and work. Not one person. But every time I have to go somewhere, I will get asked that question, or I will get judged because I have to travel internationally and leave my kids for 2 weeks. Nobody judges my husband for that. They judge me for that though. And then I internalize that. And how do I feel about that? And it impacts me, you know? So these women, I think, reach out because they're going through similar things like that.
Yeah.
And they need someone that understands them and connects them and has walked that path as well.
It's so important to have mentors, to have people that understand you, that have walked the path before, that get it. And like you've mentioned a few times, when you got to that point, it was very lonely. And it's so important for us to connect and have the right people around us, isn't it?
that is our core, right?
Yeah.
Is connection and being with people. And, you can be an introvert, you can be an extrovert, but if you don't have that kind of connection, it just feels meaningless. If you can't share with people, if you can't be open and vulnerable to an extent, like what are you doing? What is going on?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So this is the 6-Star podcast. Yes, I know. Crazy, huh? So question for you. What does being 6-Star mean to you?
Oh, I think it means being your whole self, being real with your whole self, right? It is so easy to tuck away and hide the pieces of you that are not pretty, right? The pieces of you that are messy, the pieces of you that are just challenging. It's so easy to push those away. And I think being 6-Star really means taking ownership of those pieces and knowing that they're a part of you and knowing that that is okay and embracing them and loving your whole self, even as you are imperfect, right? Because we're all imperfect. And I think to be 6-Star means kind of to own your imperfections.
That's pretty cool. I haven't heard that one. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it's a piece about the connection. It goes back to connections, right? Like those are the pieces that we've all been taught to tuck away, hide away, don't share, don't tell anybody of those things. It's the shame that we feel, right? But when we share those stories and we share that shame, it takes away its power of shame. It makes you human. It makes it normal. It makes it okay. And I would much rather go through my life feeling okay, imperfectly myself, than feeling like I had to hide those pieces away.
Absolutely. And I wonder, do you feel that today in this current environment that we're in, it's becoming more okay to accept those parts of ourselves? Because I look at my mum's generation, everything got swept under the rug. Everything was hidden. Everything was stuffed down.
There.
Yeah, it was a very big mound under that rug. It was a very lumpy rug. And yeah, I see it through it with my friends' parents, just that generation, just everything got stuffed in, kept quiet, lid down. And yet we're in a very different space. And I'm so grateful that I'm in this generation, that I'm here today, because we are seeing such a beautiful, I think, opening of humanity. And I also feel like COVID helped bring this about to a large extent.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, because it brought the entire world almost to an equal place for once, right? Everybody was going through this same shocking, horrifying, terrifying event that nobody predicted and nobody knew was going to happen. And we were all very isolated, right? Mental health became one of the hugest topics to address. And it really uncovered what was already there. It didn't create yes, it made it worse for a lot of people, but it didn't create this new concept of mental health. But it was very popular where I was, where everybody had these shirts and these sayings that said, it's okay to not be okay. And so to embrace that level of like, today's not a great day and that's okay. Like I'll wake up and do it again tomorrow and maybe it'll be better. Normalized it, right? It normalized not having to be amazing all the time and to be on all the time. And I thought that was so wonderful, that it was okay to talk about your mental health struggles. It was okay to say, I'm having too much wine. It was okay to say, I'm not happy, right? And all of those things, to your point, that were always historically, don't talk about that. We don't talk about that at work. We don't talk about that here. We keep that inside our house. Guess what? Now it's everywhere. and it's okay, because other people are going, I struggle with that too.
Yeah. I wonder how this is going to change the conversations at Christmas.
You know, I don't know. I don't know, but I think that it opens up all generations. You know, I'm very fortunate. My mother-in-law is still around. And we talk about the differences from when she grew up and the things that she tolerated and the things that I do or don't tolerate, right? And we all have a spectrum that we work off of, you know? And so it's interesting to hear the different perspectives and the different stories and to talk about them. And I always wonder, like, what trauma am I inflicting on my own kids now, right? Because everybody talks about their childhood traumas. And I'm like, well, what trauma am I giving my children? Because I'm sure they're going to be in therapy talking about something, you know?
Yeah, I think the same. I wonder. Yeah, it's good
but
to
you
know
know
that.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do the best we can.
Exactly. And I love that because you're just so open and accepting and you laugh about it because there is nothing else that you can do. You know, you're a conscious mom, you know, you're living life with love and passion and purpose and you're just being very open and aware and we're looking at everything.
Yeah.
Being real about
and I yell at my kids, you know, like I yell at them and then do whatever. And my kid will have a moment and do something awful. And we talk about it and he'll say, I'm such a bad kid. And I'll say, you're not a bad kid. You made a bad decision, you know? And it's so, I'm like, do you remember when mommy made a bad decision? Like, let's talk about mommy's bad decisions because I got a lot of them, you know? And we talk through those things. So yeah, it's just interesting to see where it's all going to go and what purpose and passion and values and all of that means to the next generation coming up.
Absolutely. Talk to me. I'm really fascinated to know your, I guess, matching your purpose and what you're doing with your consulting business and everything that you've talked about, you know, I guess breaking the stereotypes and creating a new world. Having children, was that something that I guess sparked this desire to make a change for the future, or was that always there? You know, so what you're doing, is it about the legacy? Is it about the change, and how much are your children's presence in your life catapulting your path?
I think it definitely shines a brighter light on it, but I think I would have found it regardless. You know, I always knew that I wanted to be a mom. That was my number one goal in life for the longest time, you know? And I remember I used to go on dates with guys and like, I would point blank ask them like, if you don't want kids, like, let's just cut it where it is because I'm not wasting my time. And, you know, was very clear about that. And that is my number one priority, right? My children are my priority, but doing that also means creating a better world for them, you know, and being a part of that, not just being a passerby in it. So I think I would have always found my way into helping people and to doing what I love and turning that in to a business that I can survive and thrive on while making an impact. But I think having children, and I think having a boy and a girl, it makes me look at it differently because I look at my son and I have a certain level of expectations for him, how he should treat people in the workplace, treat women in the workplace, what he should know and understand about a woman who's working and how to support her versus my daughter and how she can do all of these things and get out there and be a boss or not, or be a mom or not, but just do something that lights her up.
Nice. With the women that you work with, is it part of your goal to help them find what lights them up, or is it simply to help them get unstuck?
So I hope both of those go in tandem, you know?
Yeah,
and yeah, I hope they both go in tandem. Some women come to me and they know what they want to do. they've always had this drive and this passion, but they could be stuck in the wrong culture. They could not know how to drive forward. Maybe they're not sure which path they should take to get there, but they have the destination. Some women start with me, they think they know. And then as we work through the coaching process and the discovery process of our core values and what do we really want to do with our lives, those things change over time. So I think that's interesting, but I always hope that they move together in tandem, right? Because we always have sticky floors. We are always stuck in a sticky floor somewhere. It is about bringing awareness to what we are doing and being able to take a minute and stop and say, okay, right? And connecting all of these things. So one of the stories that I always use is one of my core values is courage and doing the courageous thing, right? So whenever I feel myself like really getting stuck in something or I feel like I can't make a decision, I always stop and I ask myself, is this the courageous thing to do? Yes or no, you know? So when it came to starting my own podcast, I sat on the idea of having a podcast for probably 6 months to a year. I knew I would love it. I thought it would be fun, but I just couldn't move forward with it. I was worried about what other people would think, you know, what's she doing? She has a job. She's a mother. She's not spending time with her kids. I had all of these things and I was just stuck on that. And then I finally stopped and I asked myself and I said, Erica, are you being someone who acts with courage right now? Because someone who acts with courage would not worry about what somebody else thinks about her trying a podcast. Like, that's ridiculous when you hear yourself say it out loud, you know? So then I had to stop and I said, no, it's not. And I sat down and that day I wrote an email to 20-ish women in my life who I knew would support me. And I said, this is what I'm doing. This is how I need your help. I'm excited. The end. And then we were off to the races because I did it, you know?
Yeah. Fortune favors the bold.
Hey, you know, but again, like I sat on that idea. I was stuck, you know, and that's just one that I can tell you about that I am in this moment of self-realization about, right? There are plenty of others where I will be doing things or saying things and it's like, oh, look at what I'm doing. You know, I'm stuck in this moment of perfectionism where I think this has to be perfect and I'm not putting material out because it's not perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. You know, so perfectionism is another big one that I know I struggle with. I think a lot of other women struggle with. And it's like, you know, done is better than perfect sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's taken a long time for, I think, us women, I think of our generation, or, you know, to get to that point of being okay with done. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
It's ingrained. It's hard. Yeah.
And with perfectionism too, it's such an interesting one because had you asked me, I would have never said I was a perfectionist. I would have like called baloney on that one. It does not apply to me. And as I was talking with other women, right, connecting, sharing the stories, I realized that I have a bit of a degree of perfectionism that does not do me any good, right? So being a fitness fanatic, I was so wrapped up in this is what my workouts should look like. And if I did not have that full allocated time to do that workout, I wasn't going to do it. Like, and I'll just have to get to it tomorrow. If I can't get 30 minutes of cardio in, that's not going to do anything for me. And my husband would come up to this home gym and he would run on the treadmill for 15 minutes. And I remember in my head, I'm thinking, what are you doing? That's not doing anything. That's ridiculous, you know? And then I'm realizing, well, he just got 3 days of 15 minutes in. So he's 45 minutes ahead of me because I got nothing in. And then because I got no workout in, I just said, you know what, I'm going to eat the chocolates anyway because I'm starting tomorrow. And so I'm just rolling down this hill here, you know, full steam ahead. And it's like sometimes some is better than perfect, right? Yeah. And it really kind of helped me reevaluate. And it's something that I'm constantly working on of like, everything that I do doesn't have to be to my level of expectations all the time because I have high standards for myself, which is okay, but not hitting high standards all the time is also okay.
Something you said then just resonated so strongly, and a little word out of left field came into my mind, and that is addiction. And I feel, and I can put my hand up to say that I've been addicted to certain routines, eating routines, exercise routines, and what you were just talking about. And I think, talk to me about that. Like, do you feel it's an addiction that we have, and maybe it's a safety in that addiction to having things a certain way?
I think it can be, but I also think that we set these expectations for ourselves, right? Whether society deems it or not. We have an idea of what a woman's body should look like. We have an idea of how we should run our homes. We have an idea of how much sleep we should get a night. And we put these expectations out there. And I think it's a bit self-serving and validating when we can be like, check, I did that. Check, I did that. I'm doing all these things. I'm good. I'm perfect. Check, check, check. And that when we don't hit those milestones, that we internalize that and we feel bad, right? That's where a little bit of the shame comes in, of the I'm not good enough, I'm not doing this right. I don't have a 6-pack abs. I'm struggling here, and that's where we start to internalize that shame and stuff. So I think when we can lay it out, and it's very internal, like self-serving, so it can be addicting to be like, check, check, check. I'm doing all these things. Because we feel like we're hitting this expectation and this mark that we have for ourselves, For healthy eating, for me, it used to be like, I'm going to eat this for breakfast, and I'm going to eat this for lunch, and I'm going to eat this for dinner. And I would check off if I felt like, did I eat healthy today, right? If I go down and I have, a leftover treat from the holidays, that doesn't mean I haven't been eating healthy all day. But I would be so hard on myself to be like, well, I had sugar today. What is one little pat going to do? And I know it sounds silly to say, but it's this mindset that you get into when it comes to perfection and holding yourself to a standard that, number one, nobody else cares about. Only you care about that, But then number two, doesn't give you any joy in life. I'm chasing all of those expectations and this perfectionism for what?
Exactly. And for some people, I'm sure they do it because they think that that's what someone else that they see on social media or TV or something does. That's what I've got to do to be as happy as them.
I'll tell you too, that really fuels a level of imposter syndrome. Because when I was a fitness instructor, I used to go home and eat like an entire dinner of Mexican food and drink a half a bottle of wine. But I would never tell anybody that I worked with that because I was a fitness instructor. So this is how my life should be, right? It was very, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like fake, I guess. It was very fake, right? It wasn't real. And so I was even playing this part in putting forth these unrealistic expectations for people that fitness instructors would never do that, which was baloney.
And then getting back to what you said before about being 6-star, and it's about being your whole self, which being is actually being authentic.
Yeah, being authentically you. Exactly. And saying this is me, all of me, and I will do this, and I will say the wrong thing and I will do the wrong thing at times, and that is okay, right? I don't have to live up to these standards. I have to live up to my standards, right? And sometimes not even those.
That's right. I think we've just got to be a lot kinder to ourselves. Not make excuses for ourselves, but be kind to ourselves, because sometimes we can't. We're not robots, and we don't operate on, a continuum of energy that just stays flat on a flat line. Things happen, life happens, up, down, roundabouts, and therefore these little rigid expectations and plans we have for our exercise routines and our time and our energy and our food and all of that really get pushed around. And I'm learning to be a lot more fluid with life.
Self-compassion is, I think, one of those things that everybody's like, yeah, I got it, but it is truly a mindful practice, that is very challenging, right? And you have to be constantly reminding yourself that you are human, right? To talk to yourself like you would a loved one, to talk to yourself like you would a child, your own child, with love, with tenderness, and, forgiveness too.
When we weren't, I wasn't taught to do that. It's not something that we do. We're not typically not very kind to ourselves. We're very judgmental.
Yes. And we always say, your worst critic is the one between your ears, know that. And it really is, right? So that's the one that we have to work on the most, and is to practice and remind ourselves to be 6-star even with ourselves.
So important. I love that.
Yeah.
Great. I'm just looking at the time. We've got a few more minutes. Question for you. How difficult is it for us, or what's holding us back from being 6-star?
I think the unwillingness to be uncomfortable and to do the work, right? To do the internal work, because it is dirty work, and you do have to have some very honest conversations with yourself first, right? We talked about sweeping everything under the rug. We do that with ourselves. And I think when you finally stop and you look in the mirror and you are really honest about what you're doing, that's when you can be that 6-star, right? But that is one of the hardest things to do, is to be honest with yourself sometimes and choose to take action based off of what you know.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Hopefully those listening and just letting that sink in, process that, just let it filter in. And this is a journey. It doesn't just happen overnight.
I was just about to say, the work is never done. It's not a checkbox. You cannot check it off. The work is never truly done. And life is always going to be changing and shifting, and you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days, and you're going to learn things about yourself because you're going to be in new situations that you've never been in before, right? And all of these things you have to at some point not compartmentalize, but unpack and look at and decide what to do, but it's a constant evolution.
It really is. As we come to a close, Erica, I'd love to know from you, maybe some tidbits, or what could you leave our listeners with something practical, maybe a takeaway or something they can apply?
Connect with a friend. That's a very easy place to start, right? Is to talk to a friend and just say, I think I have some sticky floors that I want to look at, right? And in order for me to be a 6-star individual, I need to dive into those sticky floors. Will you walk beside me in this journey? Right? Because your friends absolutely will, but it is not easy to go about this alone. So that first step, connect with a friend, your spouse, your partner, whoever, but just reach out and make that connection, and you will have somebody who can walk through you with that journey.
That's really nice. Thank you. And obviously we're going to have your details on the show notes. So if anyone wants to reach out to you and connect to you, they can.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I love what you're doing. I love the energy and the passion that you've got. I love that your bell was rung as you said
yes,
earlier.
And I can't unring it, but it was so wonderful to talk to you today. I really appreciate your time.
Likewise, it's just been a joy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. I love what you're doing. Thank you for doing what you're doing for women and making the changes that you're making and helping to shift these old sticky floors in our societal fabric. Yeah.
That's right. We got to clean them up.
Clean them up. Let's do that. Thank you so much, Erica. It's been a joy.
Thank you.